So I wonder if you guys want to hear a story, and this is like one of my better stories, so, but it's kind of long, so you might not want to hear it.
We want to hear a story.
You want to hear a story? Well, I promise him I'd say, okay, sorry. I got a job for the summer up in Marsh Harbor working with the Boy Scouts one year, and I had a big old Marblehead schooner steel boat, and I had just gotten it working in Key West. I was down in Key West, and I hadn't even hooked up the fuel line to the fuel tank yet. Well, there wasn't any fuel in there, and I was using a hose down in a jerry jug for fuel, and I hadn't even hooked up the shaft at this point. And I left Key West and sailed out to the Gulf Stream after a little problem, and I hooked up and aligned the shaft while I was at sea, and it was kind of neat because I was sailing along and the shaft was spinning with the prop, and I was able to see if it was wobbling or not. So I finally got that aligned, and I'm sailing up, and I'm off about 20 miles off of West End, Grand Bahama. And this, I hear on the radio somebody calling, "Help, help, my engine died, I'm taking on water," and nobody else could hear this fella talking on the radio. So as Coast Guard specs say, you've got to answer these people and try to, and as a person, I have to help, a sailor, you have to help people out. So I got on the radio and I called this fella, and I was able to talk to him. And I said, "Well, you know, what's your problem?" And he said, "Well, I can't get my engine started." So I said, "Well, what's your latitude and longitude?" And so he gave me that, and I plugged it into the GPS, and it was 5 miles directly upwind. Now, you got to remember, I'm in the Gulf Stream, and the wind started shifting around to the northeast and picking up. And this boat was very beamy in the bow and narrow in the stern, and it went way up, and way down, and up and down. And I had my dinghy, a really nice Livingston with a 15-horse Yamaha on the back, and every time the back went down, the dinghy went up, and up and down, and up and down. So I'm talking to this guy, trying to keep him calm, because he's really freaking out. I mean, he's going to die. And this lady from the Coast Guard in Miami says, you know how they do. This is a hailing channel, and stress, you know how it is. I said, "Shut up, lady, I'm trying to help this guy." And she did, she shut up. And so I'm talking, and finally, I'm telling Michael, I finally found out his name was Michael. I never could understand his last name. It just was too freaked out, and I was trying to calm him down, and it was in a dialect, and a Haitian maybe, I don't know. I couldn't figure out his last name, never did. And so I'm trying to calm this guy down, and I look behind me, and the boat's still doing this, you know. And so here comes a Coast Guard vessel, big cutter, and it's like 4 miles behind me. I can see him. And I said, "Oh, great, I'm glad you're here. I got to turn around and go. Can I go now?" "Oh, no, you're the only one that can hear this fella." We can't, the Coast Guard vessel couldn't hear this guy. He must have been on a handout. So I called him again, and I said, I got to that lat long that he gave me, and the man wasn't there, of course. And I said, "What's your current lat long so I can come a little further?" And he said, "I don't know, my GPS is underwater." I'm thinking, this is not good. And so I got another radio message from the Coast Guard in Miami, and a fella's coming saying, "Oh, should we send a helicopter?" And I said, "Yeah, it might be a good idea." And I don't want to say, "Yeah, you best, oh, this guy's dying here." I want to keep him calm. So I said, "Yeah, you know, it's getting a little lumpy out here. You might want to send a helicopter." So the next thing I know, a helicopter's flying over my head. Coast Guard's back there, and I said, "Michael, can you see the helicopter?" And he's going, No, I can't see the helicopter." I said, "Well," and finally the helicopter goes up to the north, which is where he was drifting. Of course, he was below the water, you know, so it's the current mostly and not the wind that's pushing him, or pulling him, or whatever it was he was doing. And so the helicopter, finally, he sees the helicopter. He says, "Yes, now I can see the helicopter." I said, "Well, you have to talk to the helicopter," because he said, "Well, I don't know how to talk to that. I don't know how to talk." I said, Michael, he's got a VHF in the helicopter. You can just talk to him like this. And so he gets a hold of the helicopter finally, and then I hadn't heard anything for a while. And so I finally get on the radio and I said, have you guys found this guy yet? Oh yeah, we found him. And so the lady that I told previously to shut up, gets on the radio and she says, thank you, Bill, you've done a wonderful job of helping this fella out. And you could hear applause in the background from all the other Coast Guard people. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it was one of my better days, you know. But I'm not done with the story. So as this boat is doing this and the dinghy's doing this and slamming down, it finally breaks free. And just as I'm cutting away the last line, it flips over. And so I'm dragging this dinghy along, and finally the last painter line breaks free and it's going off. And it's pretty rough out there, and there was no way I was going to be able to get this dinghy, flip it over, and blah, blah, blah. And so I got onto the Great Bahama Bank. I went south and got on the Great Bahama Bank and spent the night there. I put down an anchor, spent the night. And as I'm going back north to West End, there goes my dinghy in the other direction. And of course it was so rough and I couldn't get the dinghy. So that's my story. So.